How's it going, everyone? And welcome to the Not a Dental podcast. I'm here with my dad, Dr. Perry. And in this episode, went over his story as not only a dentist, but a fighter pilot flying F-16. So it's a huge pleasure for me to interview my dad and excited for you guys to check it out. More general question. Is there any training in the Air Force on mindset and like controlling your mind?
Definitely.
Almost. Do they walk you through that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
What does that look like?
Oh, the Air Force is a fantastic place for personal development. I remember when I was there, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People was a book. Do you know that book?
Yeah.
Stephen Covey. They were training that. We had workbooks. There was a lot of personal development. A ton of stuff on leadership and mindset. It's an incredible organization. It's high level corporation. It's fantastic. There's not a lot of organizations like the U.S. Air Force or the U.S. Navy, or the Army. I mean, I would say like the U.S. Air Force in particular, though, my experience was very serious professionals. I think that the rumor is that they don't have as much fun as the Navy. They're pretty serious, and it's pretty competitive. So that makes everybody serious.
Yeah.
It was probably a little bit more loose when I was just starting. I watched it change because from 1999 to 2010, that 10 years was probably the most transformative in the Air Force. Things changed a lot. This is after 9/11. And just we had also fought these foreign wars, and they were deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan. That was, a lot. There was a lot going on in the Air Force at that time.
But back to like, what are some specific stuff that they walked you through that you took from it? Go deeper into that.
I can remember the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and learning that in depth with the workbook. And that helped me a lot. That guided me. There's also strategy and tactics, history. Air War College is like a master's degree. So there's command training, leadership training that goes with it at every level of officer training. And yeah, and the professionals in the Air Force and specifically the Air National Guard were excellent people, really smart, really serious, took their job seriously, took safety seriously. And they were some of the most impressive people I've ever worked with. And that includes all the dentists that I admire and respect. But I really admire Jose Brandemule. I still love Kevin Kay, who was kind of like an older brother to me. And there's, countless pilots that I flew with that were people that guided my life.
Yeah. And then how did that skill set or flying jets transfer to dentistry?
I don't think that they directly transferred because flying jets is so big picture, but they definitely indirectly transferred. I mentioned when you're at night in a thunderstorm, you're uncomfortable, you've been in the same seat for an hour and you got to go to the bathroom and you've got to refuel because you're low on gas and you have to get home. So there's moments in dentistry where, you're hungry and tired and you haven't had lunch, but the patient needs you to finish this procedure. They really need you right then. And so it taught me to stick it out in service more than anything else, I think, and to not complain. And that's hard to really teach. It's hard to explain. I don't think you can learn that in school and college.
Yeah.
So it taught me that. And then it also taught me leadership. When I'm not doing dentistry, how am I taking care of my small business? As a small business leader, entrepreneur, I think that people look to you for leadership, and I'm the one that sets the tone. So the Air Force taught me to be a better leader, which is a really broad statement. But I got leadership training from the Air Force that I don't know if I would have had that level of training if I had just gone directly into private practice, become an associate dentist. I wouldn't have that kind of training. So I'm not sure the success I would have had in dentistry without it.
Gotcha. Immediately though, like, was there points where you missed it, or?
Yeah, are you talking about when I got out?
Yeah.
The
flying?
Yeah. Well, the factors during the end of my career that were influencing me to get out of the jet were basically something where I experienced probably like same things that a lot of veterans go through. They go through guilt, shame.
Yeah.
Because they aren't part of the team anymore. And so they feel guilty for not being part of the team. And I got to feel what that was like. Not maybe to the same level as a combat veteran, but I definitely felt it, So I felt guilt and shame of not being part of the team for a while. And that lasted for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. It slowly got better. But that was rough, I think, when I felt like I was letting everybody down by not being there,
Yeah. And what was that first couple of years of practicing dentistry like? You didn't go right into owning practice.
Yeah, right. I was in private practice in Wisconsin, and then I worked for Dr. Zeno in Sun Prairie.
Wait, hold on. Actually, what was it like being a dentist and a fighter pilot at the same time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, when I was a fighter pilot, I was a combat wingman.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going through combat qualification, which is kind of like a master's degree, bunch of PowerPoints. It's like
so you were getting ready to go to combat.
Yeah, it was like a dissertation. So getting through that was like really, that was more intense than anything I had done in dental school. That was bigger than dental school. It was easy. Dental school was easier, which is hard. It was interesting, but it was easier than that. And then after that was, I was able to work as a dentist and have a team of 5 or 6 employees, team members with me. And they called me doctor. I was responsible for exams and simple dental procedures, fillings and crowns. And I loved it because I was the leader of the team. And I felt like dentistry was always easier. It always came really easy to me. Of course, I was rusty when I first came out. Like I had to really relearn a lot of dentistry. And when I did, when I was going through reintegration into dentistry, the John Kois Institute, Kois Teaching Center, dude, that was basically like going back to dental school again. So it was fantastic. That is a comprehensive look at dentistry from an excellent perspective, all different systems. So I highly recommend it. I love John and what John Kois, how he guided my life. especially during the time that I really needed it because I was coming back from, pilot training.
Yeah.
And I was talking a lot about being a pilot. He's a incredible, legendary dentist. Like, he is probably the biggest difference maker of any dentist to ever live, I would say. Not
from his coaching or what?
Everything. I mean, he's been healthy for so many years. I mean, just his career is so big. He's like the Tom Brady because he stayed healthy and he stayed teaching and he stayed doing dentistry. John Coyce has photos of patients over sometimes 40 years, maybe even longer.
Wow.
And it shows them aging.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that stuff is priceless. No other teaching institute has that.
Mm.
There was probably like 4 teaching centers in the United States, and they all have their strengths. But the degree to which the Coyce Center is comprehensive, nobody's close.
Wow.
So I really have to thank him for how he guided my career during that time. I remember when I went to training, on dental implants in BC. I was at Abbotsford, BC, at Norm Ickert's class. And Norm Ickert's a fantastic dentist in Canada. Super loving and polite. He's the dentist that you would want. He's exactly the kind of guy that you would want as your dentist. And from his team, how he was a leader to like everyone that worked there, how his office was set up, how they communicated. I learned so much from Norm. And when I went to training at the Norm Ickert Teaching Center in Canada, they kept telling me I needed to go to Coyce.
Mm. Yeah.
And they were, and Helen, and Helen was telling me, you've got to go to the Coyce Center. So she just kept harping on that and pounding that. And it just was like a nail that just kind of stayed in my brain, and it was embedded deep. So I thought, okay, I'll do it. And so I got into one of his courses, and then that's what started me going further. So that's something that I'll always keep, and I want to pursue it more because there's different levels at the Coyce Center. There's graduate, and then there's mentor, and then there's instructor. And but the teaching center has got something for everyone in dentistry, and I think that helped a ton to make me the dentist I became. Mm-hmm. So I have to thank them. There's other great dentists that I've learned from over the years, like Brian Harris and James Heaton, and others. Paul Homily is another great communicator, great dentist. Yeah. But I've gained so many friendships over the years and learned so much from those guys that, but back early on, it was John Coyce.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And what about like starting a business with, it's a hard balancing dentistry and then also learning about how to run a business at the end of the day?
Well, I mean, when you're in your late 20s, early 30s, you work 80 hours a week. Mm-hmm. You're done with dentistry at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll stay till like 8 o'clock at night, sometimes even later. Yeah. Just staring at the walls or doing training and learning. It's just incredible the difference between a young person that's hungry, how much they can absorb, versus someone that's in their late 50s. Yeah, they feel like they've learned everything.
And you remember that period?
Mm-hmm. Yep. It was like a dry sponge. You're soaking up everything. Yeah. Or like a sponge that's already wet. It just bounces off. It's not absorbed. But when you're young, you're a dry sponge. And I think that getting the best training and coaching, executive coaching you can early is huge. Because your brain fills up, your life fills up with responsibilities.
Yeah.
You know, you want to be you start having kids and you're involved in their sports and, you know, you have more roles and responsibilities. So for me, I was happy to get, you know, some excellent advice from Helen and Norm at Norm Ickert, and go to the Koi Center like they told me to.
Yeah. What did you learn? What was it like, I guess, buying the practice and then, you know, hiring employees or scaling that? Was that a little, I guess, intimidating or overwhelming?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as you get older, you're more risk averse, but when you're younger, you're willing to take risks. And that was the same for me. I bought a practice. I thought I wanted to be in Bellingham because it was just growing so much and it was exciting, and the university. But you know, Mount Vernon was closer to Seattle, and but it was just kind of like a town that you drove through.
Yeah.
You know? But I saw a practice come for sale in Mount Vernon, so I went to check it out. There was only 3 operatories built, 3 exam rooms.
Yeah.
But they had ADEC equipment, which is nice, and it was fairly new. I just really liked the commercial building and the landscaping, and I was like, "This is smooth." You know, this is, you know, a nice practice. The practices for sale in Bellingham were kind of dusty and old, and they had like 7-foot ceilings.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought, I don't want to spend $700,000 for this. But in Mount Vernon, the practice was in a nice location and nice equipment. And so I pursued it, bought it, and then just poured myself into it, hours and hours of improving it. Everything from like painting the walls. I did so much of that myself. You know, I wouldn't think about that.
Yeah.
You know, just changing the artwork, buying equipment. I loved everything. I loved the first experiences with my accountant, Brian Bray. I had a great relationship with him. He taught me so much about business, about investing in equipment, and growing the practice from 3 rooms to we've got 10 rooms now.
Yeah.
We don't use all of them. Kind of use it for this and use it for, you know, 3D printing now, or like, you know, photography. But we operate out of probably 8 rooms. So I love it. I love the expansion that we did little by little over the years. It was always something that was a challenge and kept me occupied.
Yeah. What's it like to look back now?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I remember thinking that I needed to buy 100 practices, you know, buy 2 practices, then 3, then 5, then 10, and scale. But I got some advice from Brian about, he had seen a bunch of dentists. He sees dental practices. He sees dentists that own 3 practices and ones that own 1. And his perspective was the 1 practice owners were always happier and sometimes wealthier because they had one thing to focus on, 1 supply budget, 1 group of people. But the ones that owned 3 practices were like spread thin, and you just only have so much time in the day that, you know, and your problems are a little bit easier to manage when it's just 1 location.
Yeah.
So he told me that. So I thought about buying. I got close to buying a second practice, but I just didn't think that it was going to be a good use of my time to be traveling between offices. So I never did. And I invested in other things over the years, but I just stayed focused on this 1 place.
And what's been the biggest thing you've learned with growing a team and leadership?
Oh yeah, you know, when I started, we just had such a small team. I remember that our office receptionist was carrying a cordless phone like you'd get at your house.
Yeah.
You know, like And that's what we used for our office phone. Was a cordless, like a Panasonic cordless
Okay.
phone. We didn't even have business phones. That's how small the practice was. So we grew from 3 employees, to a team now that basically has 3 parts, like the business team at the front, the clinical team, and then the hygiene department.
Yeah.
So there's kind of 3 parts to any dental practice. So that's how I see it. And the way we structure it is we have a whiteboard, which is, what a whiteboard is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like a chalkboard, and we write up all our problems on it. And so anything that happens during the day, like, oh, shoot, this mistake, basically we need to tell everyone about this. So we write that on the whiteboard. And we have meetings where we just hit all those points, everyone gets to hear it. So I have micro meetings with each subset of the team, like a few people at a time. I think that works better than a whole team meeting, but we do have meetings where we all are getting together, usually once a month.
What about the biggest lesson, like for someone owning a business? What would that be for leading a team and growing a team?
I would say something I've heard, that you need to be fearless. That would be the biggest lesson, or probably the biggest picture. Well, one of the things I think that many people fail is they just don't take a risk. I don't know, for some reason they're fearful about, I don't know, failure. And that's tough. I think that it's more of a challenge now than it's ever been. When I was younger, I was fearless, and the tough thing now for me is combining the fearless attitude of my 20s and 30s with the wisdom of my 40s and 50s. If you can combine those, and that's powerful.
Yeah.
Because you're not as wise as you are with life experience of your 40s and 50s. But the problem with 40 and 50-year-olds is that they don't take risks anymore.
Yeah.
So the big picture is to do not fear and keep that attitude.
What about advice for a 20-year-old about to go into the world?
One thing that I would say to a 20-year-old is to make as many connections as possible. Get organized with your connections, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Get a mentor.
Mm.
I've had mentors over the years where I wasn't afraid to call them up, ask for help, and just learn, just hang out, maybe play golf and talk. I've picked up so much from just being around people that I wanted to be around, that they were willing to have me with them.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? So that is what I would do, is meet and make connections, because you'll learn something from each person you're with. Like Devin Grillo is one of them, and like Greg Grillo.
Yeah.
That's an example. As you're learning about marketing, those guys are great. And there's other ones in marketing that I've really enjoyed, like Corey Kalinsky from Legwork. He built up Legwork, which was great. And he was a good relationship. And I like Pro Impressions too.
Gotcha. What about leadership techniques, I guess? Advice.
Okay, so leadership techniques
with scaling a team.
For me, getting organized with your meetings and time and notifications and reminders, and staying positive with your team. People operate so much better in a positive mindset. I probably have the tendency of getting, too serious, which then quickly becomes like critical and having the high stress, high pressure. So you have to combine being positive and optimistic around people, but also taking action, maybe letting someone go when they're not performing. That's not very positive, right?
What is
That's a
that?
difficult thing.
Yeah, what leads to that? A performance issue? Is that just like not putting in the time to?
Well, when you're noticing someone's having personal problems and they're just not contributing anymore, and they might be showing up late, or they're missing a bunch of days, and you're trying to stay positive, but you're noticing this, it's hard to combine staying positive and encouraging everyone, and you want to be the loving boss,
Yeah.
but also doing what's necessary to keep the business at a high standard.
Yeah.
Is tough because a lot of dentists are afraid. Like I said, they're operating out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to make changes in the office that they probably need to make.
Yeah.
So that's another spectrum, or basic balance. But making sure that everyone is operating at their highest values. So if you're a business manager, that they're feeling like they're doing a great job, and they're right where they should be. They're using their gifts and talents.
Yeah.
And if they're not, then move them to a role where they are, or another job where they're going to be better at it.
Yeah.
And they're going to feel better. They're going to feel like, hey, I can manage this, and
yeah,
that might be better for them. In the Air Force or in the military, they call it relieved, relieved from duty. And that makes a lot of sense. In business as well. It might be a relief for someone.
Yeah.
If you need to let them go, and that seems like a negative thing at the time, but in retrospect, you'll know that it's the right move for their health.
Good advice, Dad. Nice.
Thanks.
Nice.
Let me ask you a question. Do you mind? Who's been some big influences in your life? How do you pick mentors, and who's been a mentor to you?
Augie Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
basketball coach,
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurship club leader.
Yep.
And he was also my computer science teacher and
He had an entrepreneurship course?
club
A club?
in high school.
Yeah. How often did they meet?
Once a week.
Did you go to that?
I was in the club.
Nice. That's great.
What
What did he do?
Grew a agency for YouTubers editing videos.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So he has 30 editors working for him,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all overseas. And he just got to a point where he doesn't have to spend as much time on it anymore. Like he just manages it, and spent 3 years building it. But he's definitely helped a lot, giving me books and just teaching me how to think about growing a business and all that.
Nice.
But yeah, I don't. There's a lot of guys older than me that random connections, but I've always just taken a little bit from them. But it's cool, even though it's not what I'm doing, but seeing the dental practice, like it I don't think I've ever looked at it through the lens of business, I guess. So it's cool seeing and learning about how this place operates and all that. So
yeah, it's a great place to spend your day.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, like you wake up, you've got probably like 6 to 8 hours of alertness.
Yeah.
Right. And what's better than just like meeting a bunch of people and talking to,
Yeah.
some like 1,000 friends that show up at, 30 people at a time, and you get to solve some small problems in their life.
Yeah.
And do some problem solving, work with a team that you get to choose,
Yeah.
it's great. It's a great way to spend a life. And, I really enjoy it.
Love that.
Well, this has been fun, man.
Yeah.
Thank you
That's
so much
been
for
great.
doing this. I'm glad that you stayed a little bit later this
Of
week.
course.
Yeah. I'm glad you're coming in on Monday too. And you're going to fly back, Tuesday morning?
Tuesday morning.
Okay, cool. So
Like and subscribe.
let's do this again.
Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it.
We're going to probably maybe do it next year and see how things have changed.
Okay.
Thank you, dear friends, for listening to the latest podcast. This time was a great pleasure to have my oldest son, Oscar, with me. I want to leave you with a quote from Winston Churchill. When you're 20, you care about what everyone thinks. When you're 40, you stop caring about what everyone thinks. And when you're 60, you realize that no one was thinking about you to begin with. Have a great one. I'll see you on the other side.